January 2010. Somewhere on the internet, a forgotten website quietly published a strange message. It wasn't on the homepage. It wasn't hidden behind a password. You couldn't even see it unless you opened the page source. There, buried inside the code, was a single sentence. Immediate need. 8 to 10 Chinese or Korean. No explanation, no names, no signature, just one line. Days later, one of the most sophisticated assassinations of the 21st century unfolded inside a luxury hotel in Dubai. More than 20 operatives, forged passports, international headlines. Years later, internet investigators noticed something unsettling. The hidden message had appeared just before the assassination. Was it an impossible coincidence, or had thousands of people unknowingly visited a website connected to something far darker than anyone imagined? Tonight, we're going back to where the story really began. Not with an assassination, not with a conspiracy, but with a forgotten website almost nobody cared about. If you type Lake City Quiet Pills into a search engine today, you'll still find traces of it. The website hasn't completely disappeared. At first glance, it doesn't look unusual. There's no dramatic warning, no encrypted login page, no mysterious countdown. Just an ordinary website, the kind of website most people would close after a few seconds. And that's exactly what almost everyone did. For years, Lake City Quiet Pills existed in near total obscurity. No viral attention, no breaking news, no endless Reddit discussions. Just another forgotten corner of the early internet. Millions of websites from that era have vanished forever. Others survived only because someone archived them before they disappeared. Lake City Quiet Pills became interesting for a different reason. It survived. But almost nobody could explain what it had actually been. At first, people assumed it was nothing more than another abandoned website. Then someone looked beyond the homepage, not at the design, not at the text, but at the source code, the hidden layer that most visitors never see. At first, everything looked normal. Developer comments, fragments of unfinished code, random notes left behind during development. Exactly the sort of things programmers forget to delete. Then they found something else. Short messages, strange messages, messages that didn't seem to belong there. One of them stood out immediately. Immediate need, 8 to 10 Chinese or Korean. By itself, the sentence meant nothing. Developers leave strange comments in code all the time, jokes, reminders, temporary notes. But timing changes everything. Only days after that message appeared, the assassination of Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh dominated headlines around the world. The operation was astonishingly complex. Multiple countries, false identities, fake passports, dozens of people working together with military precision. Investigators eventually reconstructed much of what happened. But one question continued to surface in internet communities. Why did this forgotten website contain a message that suddenly looked so different after the events in Dubai? There was no proof the two were connected. There still isn't. But once people noticed the timing, they started asking a different question. If this message wasn't important, what else had everyone missed? That single discovery transformed Lake City Quiet Pills from an abandoned website into one of the internet's most persistent mysteries. And the deeper people searched, the stranger the story became. And every internet mystery eventually reaches a point where the evidence stops making sense. For Lake City Quiet Pills, that moment came when people stopped looking at the website and started looking at the people behind it. One name appeared more often than any other: Religion of Peace. At first, it looked like just another internet username, the kind of anonymous alias millions of people have used for decades. But this account kept appearing wherever the investigation led. Reddit, forum discussions, archived conversations. It was everywhere. And then without warning, it wasn't. One day, a post appeared with a title that immediately caught everyone's attention. The end of religion of peace, he died today. It wasn't written like a rumor. It wasn't presented as speculation. It read like an announcement, a farewell. For many people following the mystery, that post marked the moment everything changed. Until then, Lake City Quiet Pills had been nothing more than a strange website with unusual messages hidden inside its code. Now there was a person, or at least someone everyone believed had been real. The post quickly spread through the community. People began searching for answers. Who was Religion of Peace? What happened to him? Was the announcement genuine? Or was it simply another layer of the mystery? Even today, there is no definitive answer. What survives are archived discussions, preserved pages, and thousands of theories built around a handful of real posts. Some investigators believed Religion of Peace had simply disappeared from the internet. Others believed the account belonged to someone whose online identity had become impossible to separate from the legend surrounding the website. As more archived conversations resurfaced, another pattern became impossible to ignore. The same small group of usernames kept appearing together, again and again. Some had been discussing military equipment, others joked about private contractors. A few spoke in ways that sounded strangely professional, as though everyone already understood the context of the conversation. Individually, none of those messages proved anything. Internet communities invent their own language all the time. But together, they created an unsettling impression. It felt less like random strangers posting online and more like people who already knew each other. That feeling only grew stronger as investigators continued digging. The deeper they searched, the more the story seemed to shift away from a forgotten website and toward a network of people whose digital footprints overlapped in unexpected ways. Then another name appeared: Trent the Thief. Unlike Religion of Peace, this username could be traced across multiple platforms, archived profiles, forum accounts, years of activity. Not enough to explain the mystery, but enough to suggest these weren't isolated internet ghosts. They were real users, leaving behind fragments of real conversations. Piece by piece, investigators began reconstructing those fragments, not because they expected to uncover a conspiracy, but because every archived page seemed to raise another question. Why were these same names connected to so many different places? Why did discussions about an obscure website overlap with conversations about private contractors, military culture, and disappearing online identities? No single discovery answered those questions. Instead, each one made the next discovery feel even more important. By now, the investigation had moved far beyond a forgotten homepage. It had become something else entirely, a puzzle built from archived accounts, deleted conversations, and digital footprints that refused to disappear. And then investigators discovered something even stranger. The website itself wasn't the only thing hiding messages. Its infrastructure was hiding them too. The internet remembers more than most people realize. Even when a website disappears, its infrastructure often survives. Old DNS records, historic IP addresses, archived domain registrations, server relationships. fragments that were never meant to tell a story. That's where investigators looked next. Not at what Lake City Quiet Pills said, but at where it lived. Because every website has a history, and sometimes that history is more revealing than the website itself. Researchers began comparing historical records, old hosting information, archived DNS data, historic Hui's records. One discovery immediately stood out. Over time, Lake City Quiet Pills appeared to share infrastructure with other websites. By itself, that wasn't unusual. Thousands of unrelated websites can share the same server. Shared hosting has always been common. But investigators weren't looking at one server. They were looking at patterns. The same names, the same periods, the same small collection of online communities. None of it proved a connection. Yet every new record made coincidence feel slightly less comfortable. One website led to another led to a forum. The forum led to usernames already connected to the investigation. And suddenly, the forgotten website no longer looked isolated. It looked connected. Whether those connections meant anything was another question entirely. As investigators continued tracing old records, they found discussions pointing toward a website called The Drunken Stepfather. At first glance, it seemed completely unrelated. An internet forum, crude humor, pop culture. The kind of place nobody would associate with an international mystery. Yet its name kept appearing alongside technical discussions surrounding Lake City Quiet Pills. Nobody has ever produced conclusive evidence explaining that relationship. But the overlap was enough to attract attention. The investigation kept growing. Every archived page seemed to open another door. Every door revealed another community, another username, another thread that refused to fit neatly into the story. The more investigators searched, the less this felt like one forgotten website. It felt like several forgotten communities that had quietly intersected years earlier. Then came one of the most controversial claims surrounding the case. Some researchers argued that Lake City Quiet Pills wasn't just connected to unusual internet communities. They believed it might have been connected to private military contractors. That claim spread rapidly. It sounded believable, it sounded dramatic, and it fit the timeline many people already wanted to believe. But there was a problem. No publicly available evidence has ever confirmed it. Not a contract, not a payment record, not a government document, nothing. Only fragments, archived discussions, technical overlaps, and interpretations built on top of them. That distinction matters, because this investigation isn't about proving a conspiracy. It's about understanding why so many people became convinced there was one. As the story spread across Reddit, blogs, and YouTube, each new retelling added another layer. Some versions stayed close to the evidence, others drifted further away. Rumors slowly hardened into accepted facts. The mystery began evolving on its own, not because new evidence appeared, but because the internet kept rewriting the story. Some details became larger than the evidence supporting them. Others were forgotten completely. Separating fact from speculation became harder every year. And yet, one question refused to disappear. If Lake City Quiet Pills was nothing more than an ordinary website, why has nobody ever managed to explain every piece of it? Because there was still one final discovery waiting. A discovery that would pull this mystery far beyond websites, usernames, and archived code. It would lead investigators to one real-world event, that changed the way many people looked at Lake City quiet pills forever. By this point, the investigation had split into two completely different stories. One story was built on evidence. The other was built on interpretation. And somewhere between them, Lake City quiet pills became one of the internet's most debated mysteries. The turning point was Dubai. On January 19, 2010, Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh was found dead inside a hotel room. The investigation that followed shocked intelligence agencies around the world. Surveillance footage showed an operation that looked almost impossible. Teams arriving separately, changing clothes, switching hotels, using forged passports from multiple countries. The level of planning was extraordinary. Years later, internet researchers noticed something they couldn't ignore: the timeline. Only days before the assassination, the archived source code of Lake City quiet pills contained that now famous message: immediate need, 8 to 10 Chinese or Korean. The dates were real, the assassination was real, the message was real. Everything beyond that became interpretation. Some people believed they had found the missing piece. They argued the website had been quietly coordinating private contractors. Others believed the timing was nothing more than an extraordinary coincidence, a coincidence made irresistible by hindsight. This is where the mystery changes. Not because the evidence changes, because the human mind does. Once we know the ending, we start seeing patterns everywhere. It's called hindsight bias. Our brains naturally connect events that may have nothing to do with each other, and the internet is especially good at turning coincidence into narrative. Lake City quiet pills became the perfect example. Every archived page suddenly mattered. Every deleted account felt suspicious. Every missing image became evidence. Every silence became intentional. Piece by piece, the story grew larger than the website itself. Some YouTube videos presented the theory as fact. Forum posts repeated claims without sources. Blog articles cited each other until speculation started looking like evidence. The mystery wasn't just being investigated anymore, it was being rewritten. That doesn't mean every theory is false. It simply means we have to separate what can be demonstrated from what only feels convincing. The archived website exists. The Reddit posts exist. The usernames exist. The assassination happened. Those are facts. The connection between them has never been proven. And that's exactly why people are still talking about Lake City quiet pills more than 15 years later. Not because someone solved it, because no one ever did. But there was still one final layer waiting beneath all of this. A question that had almost nothing to do with assassinations and everything to do with the internet itself. Why had so much of the evidence disappeared? Why were investigators forced to rebuild this story from fragments instead of complete records? The answer reveals something even more unsettling than the mystery itself. The greatest mystery surrounding Lake City quiet pills may not be hidden inside the website. It may be hidden inside the internet itself. Because by the time people started paying attention, much of the evidence was already gone. Entire pages had vanished. Images no longer loaded. Links returned nothing. Profiles had been deleted. Some websites had disappeared completely. What remained were fragments. An archived page here, a screenshot there, a forum post quoted by someone who had copied it years earlier. The investigation became less about discovering new evidence and more about recovering evidence that had already been lost. This is where archive.org became indispensable. Without the Wayback Machine, most of this story wouldn't exist anymore. It preserved snapshots that nobody thought would ever matter. Ordinary pages, forgotten discussions, small details that suddenly became crucial years later. But even the Wayback Machine wasn't complete. Not every page had been archived. Some captures were missing, others had been excluded. Entire periods simply didn't exist anymore. Every missing page created another gap, and every gap created another theory. Some believed the missing material had been deliberately removed. Others argued there was a much simpler explanation. The internet is constantly disappearing. Domains expire. Servers shut down. Hosting companies go bankrupt. Images are deleted. Databases fail. Most websites aren't preserved because nobody thinks they'll ever become important. Lake City Quiet Pills may simply have become interesting too late. By the time anyone realized they should have saved everything, much of it had already been lost forever. That possibility is less exciting than conspiracy, but it's also how digital history usually disappears. Not through secret operations, through neglect. The internet feels permanent. It isn't. Every day, thousands of pages vanish without anyone noticing. Entire communities disappear. Years of conversations are erased. Projects that once seemed permanent become broken links. We tend to imagine the internet as a perfect memory. In reality, it's one of the most fragile historical records humanity has ever created. Lake City Quiet Pills exposes that fragility better than almost any other mystery. Not because we know too little, because we can see exactly how much has already been lost. Every missing page changes the investigation. Every unavailable image forces people to rely on second-hand accounts. Every broken link gives speculation more room to grow. And that's exactly what happened here. Over time, missing evidence was quietly replaced by stories. Stories repeated often enough that many people stopped asking where they came from. The mystery evolved, not because the facts changed, because the evidence became harder to verify. Today, investigators can still reconstruct parts of the story, but no one can reconstruct all of it. Some pieces are probably gone forever. And that changes the way we should think about this case. Maybe Lake City Quiet Pills isn't remarkable because of what it was. Maybe it's remarkable because it shows what happens when history disappears faster than our ability to preserve it. In the end, we're left with something far more unsettling than a conspiracy. We're left with uncertainty. And uncertainty has always been the internet's favorite hiding place. Every investigation eventually reaches a point where there are no more documents to recover, no more servers to search, no more usernames to trace, no more pages left to archive. Lake City Quiet Pills reaches that point too, not with an answer, but with a choice. You can look at everything we've seen and conclude that it was nothing more than an abandoned website surrounded by years of internet mythology. That explanation fits the available evidence. There is no public document proving the website coordinated assassinations. No court record, no intelligence file, no verified confession, nothing that turns suspicion into fact. But you can also reach a different conclusion. Not that the theories are true, but that they exist for a reason. Because the internet rarely leaves behind complete stories. It leaves fragments. And human beings hate fragments. We instinctively try to connect them. A hidden message, a deleted profile, A missing archive, a real assassination. One coincidence becomes two. Two become five. Eventually, a narrative begins to form. Whether that narrative reflects reality or only our desire for certainty is much harder to answer. Perhaps that's why Lake City Quiet Pills has survived for so long. Not because anyone proved what it was, because no one could prove what it wasn't. That uncertainty became the mystery. Over the years, thousands of people have searched for the missing piece. Some believed it was hidden in archived HTML. Others searched old WHOIS records. Some followed usernames across forgotten forums. Others reconstructed timelines from broken screenshots. Each investigator found something. No investigator found everything, and perhaps no one ever will. Because every year more of the internet disappears. Pages vanish, images break, domains expire. Entire communities fade into digital silence. One day, even this investigation may become another incomplete archive, another collection of fragments waiting for someone else to rediscover them. Which raises one final question. Not about Lake City Quiet Pills, about the internet itself. How many other stories have already disappeared? Simply because nobody thought they were worth saving. How many mysteries were never solved? Because the evidence vanished before anyone knew it mattered. Maybe the greatest secret hidden inside Lake City Quiet Pills isn't about assassins or intelligence agencies or private contractors. Maybe it's a reminder that the internet doesn't preserve history. People do. And when people stop looking, history quietly disappears. If Lake City Quiet Pills was only an ordinary website, then it became one of the most extraordinary internet legends ever created. If it was something more, the proof may already be gone. Either way, one fact remains. The internet remembers less than we think. And sometimes, the most unsettling mysteries aren't the ones hiding in the dark. They're the ones that vanished while everyone was looking somewhere else. Thank you for watching.